Hey, I'm Teen Zekas.
And hey, I'm Ilika Follette. We are business owners and moms with corporate backgrounds, and we are all about getting Black women paid in both corporate and business.
And you're listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast.
Let's go.
Hello and welcome to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. I am Teen Zekas, your pivot and pace specialist, and I am so excited about today's episode where we are going to have our very first guest. But first, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Ilika.
Hey, everyone. I'm Ilika Follette, and I work with entrepreneurs, become the guru in their industry. So I'm super excited about today. Y'all heard about us. Y'all know about us. Today, we have one of my favorite people, an amazing entrepreneur. She's a mom of three, married mom of three. I always like to say that because we all know her husband is awesome too. And she is came from corporate America, she was a corporate sales training expert for several years as well in that tech industry, and then pivoted into entrepreneurship and grew this amazing business focused on collaboration. And we call her the queen of collaboration. So coming to the stage is Deana Jean, your collab queen. Hey, Deana.
Hey, what's going on, Teen? Hey, Lika. Hey, y'all.
Oh my goodness, we are so excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I was like, I don't think I realized that I was going to be the first guest. So now there's like a little bit of pressure. I mean, I'm up for the challenge.
Ready for it. Yeah. It could only be one.
I love it. Well, we are so excited to have you here. And, we gave that introduction, but I wonder if, you could kind of open us up and tell us a little bit about your story and how collaboration has played a role throughout.
Wow. I'm going to try to keep it light and tight, right? So, as Ilika mentioned, I'm Deana Jean. They call me your collab queen. I am a Brooklyn-born collaboration strategist. Spent a little over a decade and a half in the tech industry, specifically focused on sales, training, coaching, and development, from frontline all the way up to the executive level. And I'm a mom of three, a wife of one. And I get excited about the idea of making sure that dope people, cool people, know each other. And a lot of times for me, what that looks like is bringing together thought leaders and experts. And I get excited to do it every single time because I love the magic that comes from that. So I took my sales chops and my sales experience, and I brought that into the entrepreneurial world because I truly believe that every single person has an amazing gift. And that we need to connect to people who are going to amplify our gifts, but also going to give us the opportunity to actually stand in our gifts. And that's what we do in the Success Tribe Network.
Oh my goodness. I love it so much. And I would love to give you some special credit here because I believe that Miss Ilika was following your advice about collaborating and that is what led to this podcast even coming to be.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I'm kind of responsible for this whole thing, right? Like,
I already said it in our first episode.
But this is actually such a great example because the only credit that I can take is that when I talk to people, I am able to see their genius really clearly, and I talk to a lot of people. So when I see your genius and I see somebody else's genius, I'm like, y'all need to get together. And then the cool part about it is that then I get credit for like amazing projects like this, when literally all I do is like, you need to know that person or think about this person. Now go do it. Right. And I get to sit back and chill out and see amazing things like this awesome podcast.
Well, and for those who missed it or just don't remember the very first episode, Ilika, can you tell us what that strategy was that brought us to this point?
Yeah. So Deanna and I were talking, so I'm a part of the Success Tribe. I love it. It's such a cool environment, great space to collaborate and connect with other entrepreneurs. So we were chatting one day, and I mentioned that, I want to find ways to build and connect with, additional entrepreneurs. And you mentioned, she said, do you have certain people that that you would like to meet with on a regular basis, almost connect as like business advisors to each other, or in some way that could really grow? And I was like, oh, my friend Teen would be really good. And so I was like, I'll reach out. She's like, yeah, just connect on a monthly basis, see how it works. And then maybe some collaboration can come from there. But don't just jump into the collaboration, because y'all don't know what y'all can collaborate about yet.
Right. And Ailika and I met at actually on a retreat. Mm-hmm. And we stayed connected, but it was very, few and far between. Once in a while, hey, how you doing? How's this going? And then she reached out and said, hey, do you want to get together once a month? And I was like, hell yeah, and so we were just chatting about our businesses, chatting about our families and all these things. And at some point it was like, you know what? We need to do the Getting Black Women Paid podcast.
Isn't it amazing how it happens that way?
Yeah.
Right. When it comes to collaboration, whether you're looking to be able to get to the next level in your corporate career, whether you're breaking into a new industry, or even if you're looking to thrive as an entrepreneur, I truly believe that collaboration starts with connection.
Absolutely.
And when you take the opportunity to prioritize the connection piece, magic like this just organically happens. So I love what y'all are doing, and I'm so honored to have the opportunity to be a part of a segment of it.
Oh, I love it. Well, this has been a large celebration of the the creation of the podcast, but I do want to get back to your story, Deanna, because you've run the gamut, right? We're talking to Black women who maybe are climbing the ladder in corporate. Yeah. We're talking to Black women who are maybe building a side hustle. We're talking to Black women who are entrepreneurs, and you've done it all, right? So, and we want to hear more about how you've, infused this collaboration at every point along the journey. So, can we start with employee Deanna, right? So like when you were in the corporate space, you were in the tech industry, like what did that look like? And how did you use collaboration within that to accelerate your career?
Yeah, so I stumbled into the tech industry and I tripped into sales. I tell people all the time. I had no idea that what I was doing my whole life was sales. I was the person where, I went to a high school where we used to have tour guides, like student tour guides. And I remember always being like, oh, yes, I love the idea of being a tour guide. And I would showcase the school and showcase, the little places on campus and stuff like that, and never really considered that it was sales, right? People all the time, they would request me, like parents literally, because I went to a school where kids from all over the world came to the school. And there would be parents who would be coming from like Georgia and be like, we got friends in Florida that did a tour with Deanna. I was like 14, right? They're like, we want Deanna. I'm like,
you were getting referrals.
I had no idea what it was.
So, for free work. They should have gave you a stipend for bringing in something.
I mean,
maybe a commission on that tuition.
That tuition, right? Because tuition wasn't cheap. That tuition wasn't cheap. So what I found over time was that for me, it was all about finding opportunities to create relationships that allowed people to be seen, and all about helping people see what was most important to them. So like when we were going these tours, there's a path that you have to take, but I would ask the question of the student and the parent, like, what are you most excited about seeing on campus? What do you think you want to do when you get here? And I would literally like highlight those things. I'd be like, I'm not supposed to take you here, but since you're an artist, we're going to go down to, the art lab, right?
Right.
And over time, I realized that building those types of relationships and collaborating with people to help them get what they wanted was my superpower. So that sent me into a career in educational technology.
Can I interrupt you just for a moment? Because I want to highlight some of the things you just said for our audience. I mean, you could have given the same tour a million times, and nobody would have been requesting you. I mean, well, you're charming and delightful, right? So people may have, but you made the connection even from the beginning.
Yeah.
And said, this tour is not the same for everybody. Not everybody's looking for the same stuff. I want to know what interests you, what excites you, what you have questions about. Yeah. And so you were customizing from the very beginning. So I just wanted to, I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to highlight that because those are the pieces that can transfer to anybody who's listening, right?
Absolutely.
That no matter what you're moving into, you don't have to do it on a script. You don't have to do the exact same thing every time. Connect with that person and see what's the most important thing to them. And then when you are making the sale, you can be like, hey, and remember you said you wanted to do this thing?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I've been successful over life through collaboration by making myself a category of one. I tell people all the time, I was never the smartest. I was never the fastest, but you could never beat me at connection ever. Right? I was always able to find a way to make myself a category of one and to make sure that people that I talked to were seen. And I was able to translate that into a sales career where I was in a very white, male dominated sales career. Yes. And in many rooms, I was usually one of only or one of many, not just women, not just Black women, but Black women under 35, right? My entire career. And because I created opportunities to be a category of one and do things differently, I catapulted because nobody could compete with me because nobody could do what I did. They're trying to figure it out. Everybody else is using the cookie cutter mentality.
Right. Here's my script. This is what I say.
3X my pipeline. Knock on 50 doors. I was like, I don't have time. Nobody I got 3 kids. I got a husband. Like, I got stuff to do. I got to go to a PTA meeting. I'm not knocking on 50 doors.
Right. Now it's not a numbers game because for each door you're knocking on, you were making that connection and skyrocketing the likelihood of the sale.
Absolutely. And that's, I use that with clients, but then I also use that in my career to then curate and create roles for myself that didn't exist. And that is when I realized that when you create and you curate your persona or your environment so that you are a category of one in your environment, there's literally no limit to what you can do.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a bit more because I think that's something our audience really is looking to hear because folks are wondering, like, this is called Getting Black Women Paid podcast, right? So they're like, how do I get paid and actually get to do the thing that I want to be doing, and still do it in corporate? So you talked about creating your own lane, creating your own career. Could you expand on that a little bit on how you did that?
Absolutely. Yes. So what I did was I really focused on relationships. And I focused on ultimately what would later become the framework of the business, which is goals, gifts, and gaps.
I'm sorry, can you say it? Can you say it one more time?
Yep. Goals, gifts, so GIFTS, and gaps, GAPS. So before goals, gifts, and gaps was a framework, I was using it myself as a Black woman paid, right? So what that meant was it would always start with me and my goal. I would look at what is the goal that I want to accomplish. For me, that looked like making a 6-figure salary, right? Because I live in New York City and we got to get paid. Right? That looked like having the flexibility to be able to work from in kind of agnostic location, being able to work from home. And it also looked like building relationships with people that were important to me and working in communities that were important to me. And when I looked at those goals, I realized also that I had gifts, the gift of connection, the gift, which in some instances people might have considered the curse, which was that I was working for companies that did not have a lot of young Black women. So there weren't a lot of people that could do and connect with groups that I could connect with, right? And then I thought about my gap being that the role that I wanted to create that would help me get to this specific goal didn't exist. Right. So what I had to do was I had to kind of do that audit and then create relationships where people saw the gap that I had and access to those things that would help me to achieve my goals, but also people that really honored my gift. People that really honored who I was, people that really honored my gift of connection, because that was my currency. I built relationships with people that made it so that me being a category of 1, as long as I could make a use case for the role, right? To say, hey, this doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And this is how this role existing would actually improve your bottom line.
Right. So it's not just your gap, it's their gap.
It's
Exactly.
there.
That's how you make it relevant to them, right? I mean, the connection is the currency, but they still got their bottom line, right? So you got to make the case for, this is the gap that you all have, and I can fill it if we create this thing together.
Going right back into sales, right?
Right back into sales,
what
right?
your need is. Yeah.
But it all starts with connection. So how did I tangibly do that? I made sure that I would volunteer for like little groups. Like before we had like ERGs and stuff, I'd be the person that would volunteer to say, hey, I'll be part of this group, because I knew that it would connect me to someone who could help me to achieve my goal. And it would allow us to create a connection as people versus as just comrades or as peers.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to pause on that for a moment, because so many of us are asked to do free labor at work. And what I love about what you said was you volunteered for the thing so that you could make the connections that you would use later, right? And so it's not about, okay, I'm going to volunteer my time, energy, emotional labor, all these things constantly and just hope something comes from it.
Nope.
But if I'm going to do those things, I'm going to be doing it in a way where I am talking to people, I'm making connections, I'm figuring out which departments look like what and how things work in other places, that you are always collecting information and making those connections that can help you further your career. It's not just I'm always the one who's coordinating and volunteering and doing the things to no end, because those are not promotable tasks.
They're not, right? And when you use that idea of goals, gifts, and gaps, if you're looking at these things that you're being asked to do, right? That you're being voluntold to do, or that you can opt into, right? And you have the option to be able to choose, take it through that audit. Ask yourself, first of all, what is my goal? What is my goal in this company? What is my goal in this role? What is my goal in my career?
Right.
Then think about your gift. Will this thing that I'm volunteering for, or which of these things will allow me to really show up in my gift? For me, I knew that no one could out connect me. I knew that no one could create relationships better than I could. So every role that I took on was something that allowed me to leverage my relationship building ability. And the final piece is, will this being part of this project, will being in this role, how will it close a gap for me? Do I have a gap because I need more information about something, and being part of this project is going to get me the information that I need? Do I have a gap because I need to build stronger relationship with somebody that might not be as accessible in my current role? Will this opportunity or this project get me closer to that person? Do I have a knowledge gap? Are there things that I need to learn? Will this project fill in that knowledge gap for me?
Right.
And once you sift it through there, it gives you a better idea of how to strategically choose the project.
Absolutely.
The intentionality of it. How does what I'm doing align to my actual goal of getting to work? And if it doesn't, then I got to voluntold their behinds and I ain't doing it. Right. Well, and no, I'm not. It ain't happening.
And one of those gaps could be visibility. Right? That, is this going to be something that's going to be presented to the whole company?
That's right.
And now suddenly the CEO has heard my name and seen my face, or, whatever it is. But again, we don't want to let it lie there, because so many of us, we're recognizable when we're the only one. So lots of people are going to be like, oh yeah, I know Ilika, but like getting the visibility while you are living into your gift and showing everyone how excellent you are, makes it that you can leverage to fill those gaps as well.
Right. Because when I'm in a room, obviously, like, yes, I'm going to stand out. Right.
Right.
And I need that not to be the only reason that I stand out. Because remember, when you're a category of 1, that's just not going to be based on me being a Black woman under 35, because they could go hire another Black woman under 35. While I am the only Black woman under 35 in that room, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leverage my true gift, which is my voice, which is my ability to connect, which is my ability to partner. So that now when they hire that next Black woman under 35, even though we may look the same
to them,
people who are listening couldn't see those air quotes, but
right.
look the same. Yep.
Now they don't just see me as that. They actually hear my voice. They can align it to the projects that I've worked on. They can align it to the outcomes that I've helped people achieve. And that's how you create it.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. And it's also having the creativity and the expansion of your mind to be able to see something like a role that doesn't exist and say, this is something we could create, because it's very easy to look at, the current structure and say, okay, well, these are my options. What can I try to fit myself into?
Yeah. I think that, so what I've always been a big advocate for is going into traditional roles and doing them differently. So as an example, I went into a very traditional frontline sales role where they told me from the very beginning, we're literally giving you the smallest territory, the smallest, most difficult territory, because we do not believe you're going to be successful.
And so let's set you up for failure to prove ourselves right.
They told me that. So I was like, all right, well, if that's how y'all feel, basically, I can't lose, right? Like I have nothing to lose.
Right. Exactly. Only up from here.
Right. It's only up from here. So what I decided to do was that I was going to do the role in a way that focused more on relationships and actually like coaching potential clients to their goals. So when they were hiring me, when they were investing in what I was selling for the company, it wasn't just the software. They were actually investing in me as a guide and consultant with them around how to best leverage the software. Everybody else was just selling the software. So then when I started selling like crazy, right, in a model that they didn't think would work, it wasn't just, hey, Deanna's a great salesperson. It was, well, Deanna, tell us more about how you did that. I'm like, well, I coached them to it. And they're like, coach. I'm like, yeah, if we had a role like this
right
within the company, it could be something that we might be able to replicate with employees. Interesting. And little by little, what would I do now? All right, now I got their ear. So now I'd reach out to different team leads and say, hey, I know a lot of people have questions about what I'm doing. I can't be on every single team call. But what I'd love to do is to actually record some stuff that you might be able to share with your team that gives them a better idea of what the approach is that I take. Now, what have I done? I've taken my strategy and what I've done, and I've actually implanted it throughout the organization in a way that's helpful to others. But in essence, what did I do? I've created a coaching environment in an organization that doesn't currently have one.
So then when you come in and say, hey, y'all need a coach.
Next best step is, hey, Deanna, like, what do you want to do next? And I'm like, I don't want to go into that role. Ideally, I would love a role like this. Now I'm basically indispensable to them because I'm selling, selling well. I'm taking a different approach. No one can replicate what I do because they don't know what it is. So
and your impact now is exponential because you're training others.
Now, what does the organization want to do? They want to spill that out across others.
Exactly.
You know, coach others on what you do.
And you've increased the visibility too by doing it through video, right? Because now that's being seen, and so it sets a level of authority as well. It's being routed so quickly, much more quickly than you going to each location.
Yep. And now when I'm showing up for the all hands sales meetings, now when I'm showing up for the all company meetings, people know me that I don't know because they see the video.
Right.
Right. Whereas you started as the lowly salesperson on the smallest, hardest beat, and now suddenly people know you who you don't even know.
That's it. And it expands.
Exactly.
It expands. So there are ways to do that within your respective industry. There are ways to do that within your community. There are ways to do that as an entrepreneur. But remember, it starts with identifying your goal, your gift, and your gap, like being super, super clear on that. And then really leaning into the gift and the art and science behind connection.
Mm. Right. We have gifts that will not require us to go get some other certification, go get another degree. Black women are so educated and certified and qualified. Your natural gifts and the things you've trained to do already, you already have the gifts and the talents that you need to be successful. And so it's identifying those things and leaning into those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Identifying them, leaning into them, and doing it unapologetically. I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned in being an entrepreneur, this was post, post W-2 world. Well, no, I'm back on my own W-2, but post 9 to 5, corporate, right? Was really understanding the amazing and the tremendous value of my gift. Because even in my corporate career, I was compensated very well for what I thought, right? Like what I was doing.
Yeah.
Mid 6 figures. Nobody else in my circle making mid 6 figures, right?
Right.
Working from home. What? In 2011, 2012, where they do that at, right?
Right.
Creating roles for myself, moving strategically into positions of visibility. But even then, I still did not know the value of my gift because I felt like when I left that company that I wouldn't be as valuable on my own.
So let's talk about that, right? So you made the transition from, employee getting mid 6 figures. And by that, you mean like 150-ish? Is that what we're talking about?
No, like
mid from 100
like
to
three.
Okay, thank you. That's why I want to make sure we know what we're talking about.
The threes and fours.
Okay.
Coming into mid.
Because I do want to also talk with our audience about that 6-figure goal, because that's the minimum.
Right.
Once we get to that 6 figures, we're not talking about 100. Right now we're like, okay, now let's get to 200. Now let's get to 300.
Yeah. OTE, I would say wavering on any year between 320 and 410.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's
the thing. It's like when we're talking about mid, like I'm so glad you highlighted that, because the mid is between the 100 and 1 million. So when someone says mid 6 figures, you got to know, like if you're in your mid 40s, you're somewhere between 43 and 47.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So mid 6.
Right. We're not talking about mid 100s. We're talking about mid 6 figures, which would be like
300 and 800.
And let me say that depending on where you live, what you do, whatever the case is, like I will never sneeze at 6 figures. Ever. Right. I think that your goals are your goals.
Exactly.
And if I hadn't gotten to 6 figures, then I would not have gotten to, mid 6 figures, right? So I think it's important for us to recognize that 6 figures ain't nothing to sneeze at. And it is not the cap. It is just the beginning of what you can do.
Absolutely.
It's not the stopping point. It's
right. And so now I'm picturing you're in this 300 to 400 range and thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to go out on my own and do anything that comes near that? So tell us about that transition, how you went from employee in the mid 6 figures to consultant, entrepreneur. Like how did that work?
Yeah. Right. So I had made such a name for myself within the industry that I was in that companies were calling me when they were preparing for mergers and acquisitions and basically asking me to come in and to consult with them. So at the time I was working for a company that was paying me $200,000-300,000, but then people were literally paying me $10,000 to $15,000 in addition to that to come in and to do like a sales training for their team, right? Because they would call me to try to hire me as a W-2 employee. Come be my director of sales. And I'm like, nah, I'm good where I am. And they'd be like, well, come and do this training. And we'll pay you 15,000. I'm like, okay, cool.
Okay, so let me talk about that for a moment. So that one training, that was about how long was that training?
So 15,000, that was for a 3-day training, 3 full days.
Okay.
So I took off 3 days from the company that I was working with, who still paid me because I was PTO.
PTO, yep.
And I made $15,000 with another company where there
days.
was no NDA, right? So it wasn't like they were conflicting.
Yeah.
It was my own time, right? But 15K for 3 days.
Okay. And sorry, I just want to, I keep interrupting. I apologize. I just want to make sure that people understand this, because when you are consulting, you are not being paid hourly. You're not like, oh, well, it's this per hour. You are coming with all of this expertise to the point where they could be hiring you full time. And you're saying, you know what, I'm going to give you 3 days of my time, but it's not about your time. It's about your expertise. And so that's, I just wanted to highlight that real quick, because I don't want people doing the calculations and being like, oh, that's whatever per hour. And it's like, we don't talk about per hour when we're consulting. As a consultant.
Yes.
Because that is not, it is not about our time as much. Well, it is about our time, but it's not as much about that as the expertise, the years of expertise that we're bringing to it. And that's what they're paying for. I just wanted to highlight that before we breezed by it.
And it's the skill, right? Because I don't even want to focus so much on the years as the skill, because when Deana got into sales, she was still new in the game when she started jumping, right?
Oh, that's true. She had that skill since she was doing it at 14.
Right, exactly. That these other people had been, in sales for 30 years, having the largest region, right? And they're like, well, you're brand new. Let me give you this little tiny region of 4 houses, right? Or whatever it is, right? Knock on these 4 doors. And it's like, but she had a skill that she was able to translate. So the thing that I was thinking of, even as we were talking about this, is it was the $15,000 for the consultancy, right? When the first company called and said, do these 3 days for you, how did you decide on that price? Because I think that's something our audience really wants to understand. How does that price get determined?
So this is also, it goes to, and this could probably be like 5 episodes, y'all, but this also goes into the idea, and what I say for any Black woman who is listening to this, take the meeting. Don't ever be afraid to take the meeting. Even though I was happy, very happy with where I was, when recruiters and headhunters would reach out to me about interviewing for other roles with other companies, I would take the meeting. Why? Because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And remember, collaboration is about connection. So if I have the opportunity to connect with this person around this role, what happens is that I now become that category of 1. Because remember, they're not going to meet nobody else like me. So even if it was what they were thinking of before, they're not going to know. So ultimately what that looked like was a headhunter called me because the company wanted me to come in and to be their director of sales. I was not happy with what they wanted to pay me for that, even though it was a little bit more than I was already making. But remember, my thing was, if I'm going to jump ship from this really cushy opportunity that I have in this role where I've created this own role for myself, I literally can walk myself through whatever I want to do for the company, you're going to have to double what I currently make.
Exactly. You have to really come in.
You really got to come with it. So I said no. And this man called me every week for the next 3 to 6 months.
Because he was still interviewing for that job and realizing there was no one out there like you.
And in the initial conversation, I said to him, listen, I'm not going to jump ship. But what I would do is I would consult with your group. And he was like, no, we're not looking for a consultant. We're looking for a full-time person. I was like, okay, cool. And they kept interviewing people. Guess what? They could not find anyone like me. So then 6 months later, he says to me, hey, listen, is that consulting offer still on the table?
Yeah.
Sure. The price is going up, but absolutely. Because now I know that that ain't nobody else out there like me.
Right.
So what I looked at, first of all, the number of days that I would be there. That's 3 days that I knew I would be there. 3 full days. The most important thing that I looked at, though, is I grabbed the data from him to understand what the transformation was going to be for them. I thought about how much this sales training that I was going to give them, how much money it would make them over the course of the next 3 to 6 months. And if I'm training a sales team and I'm taking 3 days to do sales training, my anticipation is that your sales team is going to make at least 20 to 30% more than they would have made if they hadn't trained with me. So I looked at what that number was, and I made whatever I was charging. That number would be 3x of what I was charging. So for this specific company, it came out that they would make a minimum of anywhere between 40 to 60K within the next 3 to 6 months, based on what I knew about their data, based on the holes that they had, and based on the training. And remember, this training is going to live on in their minds, their hearts, and their brains. So if I say to you, hey, you're going to make 45 to 60K
in 3 months. Yeah, give me a third of that now.
3 months. Exactly. And you just have to pay me 15. He literally, I lowballed myself because he said yes too fast.
Yeah.
But in essence, he kind of won too, because when I went on to consult, it was my opportunity to actually get to know the team there. And we ended up renegotiating, and I'm leaving where I was and ended up going to this other company at the rate that I quoted him the very first day.
That is because you know what? What's so funny about that is you got in, and now before they could just hear about you. Now, when you came into that consultancy role for 3 days, now they saw you in action, and now they want to make an offer.
And I knew it. And I knew it, right? I knew that if they came in there and they saw me, and at the end of the day, he ended up paying much more because he had to pay me to consult.
Exactly.
And he had to pay me what I asked for the first time. And we joke about it even to this day because I still talk to him. I said, you would have saved yourself a lot more money.
Exactly.
If you just did what I told you to do the first time.
And you still talk to him because, I'm sorry, Alika. I was saying
real quick. I was going to say, when they came back, you should have said, well, yesterday's price is not today's price.
In essence, that's what I said. In essence,
Exactly.
is what I said.
Exactly.
It's going to go up. Remember I told y'all before what I would take? Nah, not no more.
And today's price is not tomorrow's price. But I love that you still talk to him because it's about those connections. You're still connecting with that person because you know what? Who knows what kinds of opportunities you may be looking for in the future. And he might be there to, connect you with something big.
And here's the thing. This is the strategy piece, because I stayed with that company for a year, and that's the company that I actually pivoted from into consultancy. As a consultant, the relationships that I built at that company over 1 year remember, this is a company I wasn't going to join. They paid me to consult. Now they pay me all this money for this 1 year, right? The relationships that I built at that company, only from that company, have generated more than $500,000 worth of business for me in my business in the last 4 years. Just the relationships with that company. So that means either somebody from that company that referred me to a big contract. Right. That means somebody from that company that went somewhere else and they have hired me now where they are. That means somebody from that company who has introduced me to somebody who has created an opportunity for me. Over $500,000 in revenue from that yes and the strategy behind the connections and the relationships.
And I just got to say that again. So if y'all didn't hear it, $500,000 was made via relationships from a 1 year role, basically. 1 year.
And they paid me for anyway.
Right.
I didn't do it for free.
Paid for, right.
Right.
Paid for, and turned into over $500,000 and still things coming in, I'm sure.
Right. And they will always lifetime relationships.
Exactly.
So, collaboration, when you focus on collaboration, you really want to think about lifetime value. If I would have just seen it as, all right, well, there's just this consulting thing, I could have charged him $30,000 to do that consulting. But what did I do? I looked at the long money. I looked at the long-term relationship because I knew that strategically, I would have a lot more wiggle room with him by meeting him where he was, doing the job really, really well, building the additional relationship, because it's not just about that one contact that you have.
Yep.
It's about being in that environment. It's about the influence that you have. It's about the visibility that it creates.
Right. Maybe he's not the person that gets to approve the final number you get paid. But then once you came in and more people got to see you doing what you did, now he can make that case. Hey, what she asked for is actually what we need to give her.
But you won't know that unless you connect.
Mm-hmm.
Connect with intention. That's exactly where it starts. And know your goals, gifts, and gaps, so that when you connect with people, you know what you're listening for.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to highlight that you were there for 1 year, because so many of us are like, oh, I've only been at this company this long. I don't know if I can make these girl. You, the connections you made in 1 year, nobody is talking about how you were only there for 1 year, unless it's with sadness that they don't get to work with you every day. But nobody is like asking you about, oh, what's this on your resume? Only 1 year, which, I mean, obviously irrelevant now, but just to highlight that when you are making those relationships, the people who you're connecting with will understand when you're moving to a better thing, and they'll be excited for you.
Exactly. Especially if you're in an industry where people move anyway, right? And that's what's important, is even if you're going to be there for 1 year, make sure that your impact is lifetime impact. I didn't treat that project like I was going to be there for 1 year. I did not, create systems or processes that would fall apart. I did not leave them in a lurch. I created lifetime. I used that year to create lifetime value relationships. Sometimes you have to do, sometimes even what you don't want to do for a short amount of time in order to be able to have a lifetime value of benefit. There were things that happened during that year where I was like, yeah, I need to roll out. Yeah, this isn't the culture that I want. There were so many things that happened, but I had to continue to remind myself of what the long game was, so that when I was in a position where I said to them, listen, I'm going to leave. And in doing that, I want to give y'all the opportunity to be one of my first clients.
Yes.
It was a no-brainer yes, a full body yes from them.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you made the transition from that role to full-time consultancy.
Yep.
So what did that transition look like? How did you strategize around that? And how did the consultancy do?
How did you shift your mindset to say, let me open up to this, getting rid of this guaranteed situation? Because I think that's what a lot of our listeners are, that's where the struggle is. This is guaranteed, and this is maybe,
absolutely
that for you,
yeah. So I'll never forget.
Married, all that. Now that can shift.
Absolutely. So it was Thanksgiving, and we were away. And I used to do these little consulting calls. So we would have like these organizations that would call thought leaders within the industry, because there were investors that would pay these agencies to have consulting calls, conversations with people to get like market research about the industry and to understand like what their market position should be.
Sure.
And I was in an industry where it was a very hot industry, and you had people from all over the world that were trying to understand. They saw the money behind it, but they didn't understand the intricacies of it. So I would have these agencies that would call me and say, hey, Deana, this company or this investor wants to talk to you. And you have an hourly rate that you put down for your time. And my hourly rate at the time was like $300 an hour. So literally I would get on the phone with this person for an hour, and no like prep work or anything like that, because I lived and breathed this industry for a decade, and come off and be $300, richer after one call, no prep call. So Thanksgiving, they call me and they're like, hey, Deana, there's this company that wants to talk to you. And they have seen your profile. They're specifically going back to high school. They're specifically asking for you. They want to talk to you, right? They have other people that have talked to you. They want to talk to you. And I said, okay, cool. I'll do it when I get back after Thanksgiving. And they were like, oh, but they would really like to talk to you on Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I'm like, no, I'm away with my family. Like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'll do it afterwards. They hang up, and then they call me back and they say, hey, how much would it take for you to take an hour out of your time and your vacation with your family the Tuesday before Thanksgiving for you to have this call? And remember, the average person that was doing these calls, it was like $200 an hour. So I was on the highest end already.
Right.
Highest end, $300. I was like, well, I'm already at 3. I was like, but it's not $300. And they were like, well, what is it? And I was like, $600. They were like, okay. And I hung up the phone and I told my husband, I told Mark, I was like, yeah, I just told these people $600 for an hour. Like, he was like, oh, you could have done. I was like, no, it's fine. Like, we're here. They call me back and they go, can you talk today? And I'm like, okay. And they're like, yeah, they agreed to $600 an hour. So I'm holding the phone and I'm like, they took the 600 and Mark is like, take the call, like do it. So I do this call with this person. We end up on the phone for an hour and a half. Like, because they wanted to continue the conversation.
900.
And within 20 minutes, I had $900 in my account.
Wow.
That was not attached to the company that I worked for,
Right.
was not attached to the reputation of the people that I was around. And in my mind, I was like, this is interesting. And after that call, I said to Mark, I think I want to do consulting full time. Because I wanted to reclaim my time. My kids were getting bigger. My husband was in the military. Like, I was on a travel schedule. I was on a plane 10 out of 30 days a month.
Yeah.
A lot. Right? So I was like, if I can reclaim my time. And within 2 weeks, I went in and I was like, hey guys, and my husband, God bless him, he has always been my biggest cheerleader. And he's like, yo, if anybody could do it, you could do it. So went, and I said to them, listen, I'm leaving. And it was a gamble because I didn't have another client. Like, I didn't have another corporate client. I was banking on my reputation. I was banking on my expertise. I was banking on the fact that they were going to say yes. And they didn't know it. And I said, listen, I am going to, move on and start my own consultancy. And what I want to give you guys the opportunity to do is to actually be one of my first clients so that we can continue with the scope of work that we started.
Yep.
And I quoted them a third of what they were paying me for the year. But now that is,
way less time.
fifth of the time.
Right.
Right.
And now they don't have to worry about taxes, employment tax, all that. And
everything. Yep.
And they winced a little bit. They were like, all right, let's do it.
But it's better than having you for 2 weeks and then you're gone. It's better than this is my notice. And
they said, let's do it. And that was an $80K contract. And that is what funded my consultancy.
Your first client was an $80K contract. So to get to 6 figures in your first year was a no-brainer.
And my first year in business was the year of the pandemic. So my first year, this all happened at the end of 2019.
Wow.
And then I rolled into 2020 and the pandemic happened. And I'm very proud to say that in year 1, we grossed 6 figures.
Yeah.
In the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
And
the pandemic was rough on sales. So
had to pivot. That's when I started working with entrepreneurs because the corporate stuff shrunk. People didn't know what was happening. And I started to see that there was a need for women to understand how to collaborate with each other from an entrepreneurial perspective, but also for corporate women to understand how to navigate corporate expansion, getting paid, creating roles for themselves. So I started to take on mentees, and that's how we got to our first 6 figures.
And I want to highlight one thing for folks who are thinking like, oh my goodness, she made this decision and then 2 weeks later she was in there negotiating. I want to highlight that you use that framework, right? The goals, gifts, and gaps. And the fact that you are constantly reassessing your goals, right? Most people, I don't know if we could make a decision and then say, okay, and I'm going to act on it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But you are so in tune with your goals.
Very clear.
Yeah.
And with how you're going to use your gifts to achieve them. And with, okay, well, what are the gaps? What are the things I'm going to need to make it happen? And that since you're living in that framework all the time, that is what narrows the gap, I'll say, between decision and now carrying it out. Yeah. Right. And so, so many of us were hemming and hawing and we're trying to figure out, oh, can I do this? Can I do that? But really practicing that goals, gifts, and gaps in all aspects of your career journey will equip you to then be able to make these decisions and to be able to act and say, hey, I'm ready when it's time. So I love that you are living the example of the framework that you teach as well.
And using it to understand that from other people. Because let's face it, like when you're networking or when you're in corporate, or even when you have lunch with someone, you want to be able to make sure that the time is going to be used in a valuable way that gives you the data or the information that you need to inform what this relationship could look like. How can I add value to this person? So even if you look at goals, gifts, and gaps from the perspective of the things that you want to be able to answer questions around after you have a call with someone, understanding their goal, understanding their gift, understanding their gap. It makes it so much easier now to be able to provide valuable solutions and to see where you can plug in to support people.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, Deana, as you said, this could be 5 episodes. We could talk with you all day. I hope that we do have an opportunity to have you on again, but
I love it.
I think that we can leave it here for now, but I'm wondering how our audience can continue to learn from you, can get in touch with you.
I appreciate that. First of all, thank y'all so much for having me on. This was really fun. I do a lot of podcasts. And this is at the top. This is one of my favorites. So thank you so very much. If folks want to connect with me, I love to connect on social media. So you can find me at Deana Jean on Facebook as well as on LinkedIn. And then on Instagram, you can find me at Your Collab Queen. And if you have watched this and you are looking to be able to better understand like what your collab personality is, or you want to better understand how to leverage this idea of goals, gifts, and gaps, shoot me a direct message. Let's connect. And I am happy to gift you with a resource that can help you to understand how to better leverage connection and collaboration.
Oh, fantastic. And we'll make sure we put the links to your Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram in the show notes. And again, this has been a blast. We are so excited to have had you on. I don't know if Ailika, if you have any final thoughts as well.
Just want to say thank you for being here. Honestly, collaboration has been such a game changer in my business too. And what's so funny, and this could be a whole nother episode, but what's so funny is that the first time that I actually started collaborating was when I connected with Deana, because sometimes you stand in competition and not realizing that collaboration is so much more effective. That's where the whole other episode goes into.
Yes, absolutely.
That's another episode, collaboration over competition.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Right. If there's someone who's doing something similar, they have a whole audience of people who might also be your ideal client. And it's not about trying to poach them or trying to,
you gotta have a strategy. You gotta have a strategy. You have to have clarity.
What added value can we both bring to each other's audiences?
That's right. Yes.
And how can we add? Oh, I love it.
I'm about to be a resident. I'm about to be a resident. Black Women Paid, the resident expert on collaboration.
Absolutely. So we are so excited again. Thank you for being our first guest, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. But
I appreciate that.
For those who are watching or listening, thank you again for joining us, and we will see you in the next one.
All right.
See you.
Soon. Take care.
Hey, thanks for watching the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can catch more episodes like this one.
And join the conversation by leaving a comment below. Be sure to share this channel with incredible Black women in your life so we can continue getting Black women paid.
All right. We'll see you in the next one.